Welcome, Drink with James, episode 181. This is the first time we're filming in 2020, new decade, new year. Just got back from, I think our office was closed for 10 days or something. Everyone's feeling refreshed, although looking a little sleepy. And, I think we don't quite have the pep in our step back yet. But I think we closed the office during, between Christmas and New Year's. And I think that, given how hard everyone works all year, it seems crazy not to do that. And I know that, for Fohr employees, everyone seems to come back refreshed and kind of ready to do it all over again, except more. And I think that those breaks are really important. And I saw a few influencers talk about, kind of stepping back and taking some time off from social over the holidays. And I think that the fact that it's a new year is a good time to remind you that, you don't have to do this every day. While for many of you, this is your job. Most people get weekends, and influencers, you don't get, while you're not sitting at a desk for 10 hours a day, Monday through Friday, you don't get the time off in a traditional sense that other people do, where you just totally are not doing your job. And I think that it's important to take that time to step back, to put the phone down, to not be creating content, even if you're passionate about it. I mean, even if you love it, I think it's important to take time off. I race bikes. I'm an amateur bike racer here in New York City, something I love to do and I've done for years. And, during the summer, I'll ride 15 hours a week. So it's essentially a part-time job. And I'm like one of those people with exercise that, like, if I don't exercise 2 days in a row, I really start to get depressed and it starts to gnaw at me psychologically. But it's super important for me to not ride my bike for a couple weeks, and in the winter, in the off season, to ride it, to kind of mix it up and try and do different things, because you just get sick of something. And even something that you love and that you're passionate about, you can get fatigued. And when you're fatigued, you're not kind of, putting the energy into it that you need. And I think that, for a lot of you, you're probably more burnt out than you realize. And it's okay to take a step back, and it's okay to take a week off. And after that week, when you come back, sure, maybe you lose some followers. Maybe it takes a little while to re-engage with that audience, but they will be there. They're not going to just leave you after a week and say, well, fuck her or him. They didn't put content up for a week and I'm unfollowing them forever. That's not going to happen. And you can take that time, and I think you should, and I've seen influencers that do, take 1 week or even month-long periods of time where they don't take sponsored posts. I think that's a really interesting idea, to just step back and step away from it for a bit and give yourself a breath of fresh air. Give yourself some perspective to think about what it is you want to do with your little corner of the internet and with your influence. How do you want to wield that influence? What do you want it to do for your audience? What do you want it to do for you? Ask yourself, are you happy? Do you even want to do this anymore? Just because you have a following doesn't mean you have to be publishing anymore. I remember talking to an influencer years ago. She was one of these people that, was one of the biggest kind of Instagram people in the world for a long time early on. And I remember her saying that she hated the person that was her Instagram account. Like she hated the persona that she felt she had to portray, which was one of, always being happy, always, being inspired and generally positive. And she said that she didn't feel like that person anymore, but her life and her economic well-being and livelihood all depended on that person continuing to be alive. And she grew to resent it. And you could tell in her content, it just stopped being as good because she didn't love it anymore. And I think that before you get to that point, better to take a week off, better to take a month off, so that you can come back inspired, ready to go, and ready to kind of do it all over again with the energy and enthusiasm that your audience and your brand partners deserve. So that is my beginning of the year PSA. And I think kind of rolls into our first question, which our first topic, which is year in reviews. We did a year in review. It was great to see everyone posting that. For us, it's a lot about data. It's a lot about giving you guys stories to be able to kind of tell your own story about the year. I also saw a lot of people just like posting these really long stories, recapping their year. And, you know, it was interesting because for most of them, I found them really boring. I found them kind of self-involved and self-indulgent, really, I think is what I would say. And I even saw one influencer say like, you know, thanks for indulging me, my walk down memory lane, which I actually appreciated because I felt like it was indulgent. You know, we always talk about inspire, entertain, or educate, right? That's what your content should do. If you're working in service of your audience, it should inspire, entertain, or educate. And it felt to me a lot of the year in review content that people put out on their stories especially, that was just them going through their photo roll, pulling out everything they did this year and reposting it. I just thought, yeah, it was just really, really boring. And respected the influencers that resisted the urge to do that, and respected the people that took a look at their year and, you know, put some time and thought into it, you know, and if the end of the year or the beginning of the year is a time of reflection, it's a natural time to, you know, look back and take stock over, you know, where you started and where you ended up and what happened in between. Excuse me. Then it deserves thought. You know, if you're taking his stock, as it were, then think about it. And I think that's the thing about these year in reviews for most people, is that there just was no thought. It was just like, I went here, and then 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 I did this, and then I did that. And I find myself skipping through or saying like, well, what the fuck do I care? I've been following you. I know you did that. I saw it the first 2 times you posted it. But there were some people who went back and, you know, tried to, you know, pull themes out of the year, or give, you know, or maybe they could talk about things that happened to them that year with some, you know, with some wisdom or candor that they couldn't when those events happened. I just felt like I wasn't really getting much from these stories other than people kind of bragging, which is for me the worst. Is like social at its worst is when it's just you wanting to show off. And I will say that for me, sometimes the opposite was true for the decade in review. You know, that because people looked at the last decade of their life, they were forced to talk about growth and talk about their dreams and you know, the things that they've accomplished. And I think something that, you know, Casey Neistat said in his decade in review was that, you know, he used to talk about or define himself by the things that he wanted to achieve in life. And now he's able to define himself by the things that he has achieved. And while he still has goals and dreams, you know, this decade for him has been one of achieving a lot of the goals and dreams that he had a decade ago. And that, you know, that builds a connection that makes you feel proud of a person. It makes you maybe inspired that you can also change your life. And, you know, I learned things about people from their decade in reviews or their kind of introspection on that I didn't know before. You know, I didn't know Joe Greer wasn't taking photos 10 years ago. I didn't know Crystal Bick worked at Google 10 years ago and was quite successful there. And so I found those interesting but the single year in reviews that people did, just stunningly boring. And I don't have any takeaway here for you guys. I don't know if I'm in the minority here, and you guys loved all the walks down memory lanes that people did. But I think it's a good reminder when you see a lot of people doing something on the internet like that, especially if it's going to be a long story. Those year in reviews were 20, 30, sometimes 40 story frames long. Make sure that it's interesting. Make sure that it's something that your audience is actually going to care about, and make sure it's not only in service of yourself. Question number 2. So, as we move into the new year, you guys are all thinking, how am I going to change? How am I going to change my station in life? Again, how am I going to make sure that in 12 months in December, I get to make this whole post about how I was in a much different position a year ago, and I've grown so much, and it's been such an amazing year, and I have you guys to thank. Thank you so much. Gratitude, blah, blah, blah. How do we get there, right? I think, I'm not going to talk about all the ways that you can get there, and, it's kind of up to you guys. But something we hear a lot of influencers talking about is wanting to get more long-term partnerships, specifically year-long ambassador programs. For us, it's something we pitch to our clients all the time. We think, we're increasingly pushing our clients into year-long contracts with us because it makes a lot more sense. And I know that influencers enjoy it as well. We just, renewed a bunch of the Sephora Squad for next year. We're doing Sephora Squad again. Yeah, can I say that? Yes. We're doing Sephora Squad again in 2020, which we're super excited about, but those year-long contracts have worked out really, really well, and the influencers involved have enjoyed it. Let me give you a few points on how to pitch yourself more effectively for a year-long contract. The first thing I think you want to focus on, well, let's step back. First, you need to find the right clients for it, right? Unlikely that you will be able to pitch in a year-long ambassador program with a brand you've never worked with. Possible? Yes, especially if you're a much bigger influencer. Probable? No. Your best bet for year-long ambassador programs are brands that are already working with you multiple times throughout the year. So get your spreadsheet. Hopefully you have every brand you've ever worked with, when you worked with them, how much they paid you, the lifetime value of that client, everything like that. Look at the people that worked with you the most number of times, not who gave you the most money once, but who worked with you the most number of times. Those are your first hot leads to go after. Then you go to them, and you're a lot of ways, you're talking about giving them some economies of scale. For those of you that didn't study economics in high school or college, economies of scale essentially say that as something gets, as the scale of anything gets bigger, the unit costs of that thing go down, right? So if I buy one of these pens, that's a lot more expensive than if I buy 1,000 of these pens. It's a lot more expensive than if I buy 10,000 of them per unit, right? So economies of scale is a driving force in every single business. And so as an influencer, if you're selling 15 posts to a brand, they should be paying, if you're selling 15 posts to a brand, they should be paying quite a bit less each post than they would if they bought those 15 one-off throughout the year. So does that make sense? So let's do the math easier, because I'm not a huge math guy. So let's say you're selling one post a month, 12 posts for the year. I'd probably sell them that for the price of maybe 8 posts. So I think that's like a 35% discount, give or take, right? So right there, you're saying, look, you're already going to want to work with me. We know that. And doing this saves you 35%. The other thing it saves is, and another thing to kind of talk to brands about and talk them into this, is that if they sign a contract with you in January and they buy 12 posts from you, if you gain 50,000 followers by December, they're not paying for those new 50,000 followers, right? So any growth that you achieve throughout the year is like a bonus for them. For Sephora Squad, I think the Sephora Squad grew something like 900,000 followers over the course of the year. So that was 900,000 more people Sephora was reaching with each post than they had paid for. So it's a great deal for brands, especially if you're an influencer that's growing really quickly, to say, hey, this is a really good deal. Not only am I giving you a 35-40% discount on these posts, but every new follower I gain, you're not paying for that. Because if you're charging, if you're at 100,000 followers today and you're charging $1,000 a post and you get to 150,000 followers by December and you're charging $1,500 a post, they paid for them, they paid maybe $650 a post in January. So economically makes a lot more sense for the brand. Now, obviously, another thing to talk about is it just makes more sense for the audience. There was a gap between when Sephora Squad ended and when the people that were re-engaged could announce that they were re-engaged. And you could see their audience being really upset that the Sephora partnership had ended. It was this year-long robust partnership that felt really authentic, really organic, really natural, and the audiences really enjoyed it. And I think that is the holy grail for brands, and that, and something influencers want as well. They don't want to work with 10 different brands in the same category. They want to say, this is my thing. No, this is my favorite skincare brand, and I'm going to work with them for the whole year. I think that's a much better feeling for you. It's much better for your audience. It's much more authentic. And so why brands should do this is really, that's the number one. Yes, it is cheaper, but more importantly, it just works better. And we also know that people need to see something multiple times. The textbooks will tell you 7 times to get to a point of purchase. Well, how the hell are you going to do that if you buy 2 posts from you? Huh? It doesn't work. You have to see something a lot. And so for a brand working with an influencer, if they don't hit that audience 7 times and they don't know that they can, hit them with traditional marketing or Facebook ads or Instagram ads on their own, how are they going to sell that product? And so the year-long contract takes care of that. It allows enough touch points throughout the year that we can move that audience through to purchase. And that's an important point to talk about when you're trying to sell this to brands. Another thing is flexibility on the brief. So if they buy 10, 15, 5, whatever posts from you, you don't have to say what each post is about. If it's one a month, they can tell you at the beginning of the month, we are focusing on sweaters this month, so we want you to do a post on sweaters. Or if it's a skincare brand, we're focusing on dry skin because it's winter. You can tell them that you don't have to lock in what every single post is going to be about. You can be flexible. What they're buying is a number of posts from you that they get to use. They basically have a credit, essentially, that they get to kind of use throughout the year. You don't have to set the whole program up. It's way too much if you have to say exactly what you're going to post all year. So make sure that they know that. 2 things for you to think about as you negotiate these things is exclusivity. If brands are giving you a year-long ambassador program, certainly they have to pay for exclusivity. Yes. But, they're coming through with big money potentially, or certainly a large contract. And I think that you as an influencer also have to respect that, and know that, it might mean having to turn down some of their competitors. And you should have that conversation beforehand. Are they willing to pay for exclusivity? Probably not. That would be very, very expensive for category exclusivity for something like skincare. But you might want to ask, look, are there any brands that you really, really hate? Are there any brands that you'd be really upset if I worked with? As a beauty influencer, let's say, it's natural that you're going to post about a lot of different brands. People want to see you try a lot of different things, but a lot of brands have like an arch enemy brand that, like, if you work with that brand, they're going to be really pissed off. And think about it from a brand's perspective. I buy 15 posts from you, right? I put my trust in you. I don't have to do that. I don't have to buy 15 posts from you, but I do. Okay? And then my competitor sees that, comes along 6 months later, buys 1 post from you, and you post about it and say, oh, I love this product so much. How am I going to feel? I'm going to be like, wait, I'm paying you 10 times as much as this brand. And you're just going to go and post about them. So it's best to have those conversations early, talk about that. Again, for exclusivity, they have to pay. But look, there's two sides to that. And you have to understand that, let's say you have a year-long ambassador program with Canon, and then Nikon comes along and wants you to do a post for them. You think Canon's going to be stoked on that? No. You would have to turn that down, I think. To maintain your relationship with Canon in that instance, you have to turn it down even if they don't pay for the exclusivity. And that may not be fair, but you have to think about, again, you have to think about what is the nature of my relationship with brand A that is paying me for a year-long ambassador program and brand B that's coming and giving me one post. And is it worth jeopardizing my relationship with brand A, which might renew for another year next year, to get one post from brand B? Probably not. Look, that's a lot of stuff. We can dig into year-long ambassador programs more if you'd like and get more into the nitty-gritty. But now is the time to pitch yourself for them. They make sense for you. They make sense for the brand. And I think they make sense for your audience. So go get those. Last, very briefly, there was a question about data privacy in influencer marketing. And I don't have a lot to say about this. You guys are out there on the internet posting your shit everywhere. You're obviously not incredibly private people, but I do think that privacy is important. Something to consider and think about is that when you sign up for Fohr, as you remember, we ask you to connect your accounts, right? Through the APIs. So the only way that you can be a part of Fohr is that you have to sign up and you have to connect your accounts. 90,000 influencers have done that. We have competitors that go around saying, we have a platform with 10 million influencers on it. And you say, well, I know you didn't get 10 million people to connect their Instagram accounts. So what's happening? What's happening is they're scraping Instagram and they're building profiles for you and selling those profiles to brands without your knowledge or your consent. And it is something to consider. And if you get outreach from another influencer marketing platform that you didn't know you were part of, you might just ask how you got that information and ask to see what it looks like on the brand side, because you don't know what info they're saying about you, because scraped information is generally wrong. This was my whole problem with, what's this thing called? That would show this is my problem with Social Blade, right? Social Blade, the reason we would always tell our clients it was bullshit is that it scraped Instagram. It would scrape Instagram and see, if there were any jumps or spikes in your following growth. But what it didn't account for was the fact that Instagram changes their API access points essentially every day. And so you're constantly if you're scraping Instagram, you're constantly having to refine those points. And if there was a gap for a week in your following where they weren't scraping your data and you went from 10,000 followers to 13,000 in that week, they would show that as a jump that happened in one day and they say you bought followers, right? Or if you got mentioned in a BuzzFeed article and you gained 10,000 followers and that spike happened, they'd say you bought followers, right? It's bullshit. It's incomplete data. And there are services out there scraping your Instagram. And while you may not care about privacy that much, the problem is they are misrepresenting you. Unfortunately, there's no real way to know what's out there. You can always Google your name, certainly. But if you get, if any of these platforms reach out, or if you hear that a brand found you on a platform that you didn't sign up for, I would reach out, tell them to take your profile down, or certainly ask to see it, because you don't know what they're saying about you. They might be saying you're buying followers and you're not. And I'm not just saying this because I think all of my competitors are trash and you guys should only be on Fohr. Well, I do think that is mostly true. But it's just something to consider. You want to know how you're being presented to the world. And with that, I bid you adieu.